Hi everyone, welcome to Johnny How To. So in this video, we're going to take a look at some of the core keys inside of Nuke, not all of them, but a good chunk of them, and just use them on their most basic levels and see how they might work well with particular shots. And what I mean by that is we have a lot of different keys inside of Nuke we have access to, especially if you're using Nuke X, and some of them work better in different instances. So we're just going to run through them, see how they work with this particular shot of Kimber, where she's wearing her I Love Zombie shirts. And we're going to start the process, at least just the very beginning process, of putting her inside the shot from Shaun of the Dead. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And here we go. So the keys we're going to use are Keylight. Go ahead and use Primatte, the very basic keyer node, but still very useful, and then also Ultimatte. Now, just as a heads up, there are other keyers inside of Nuke, especially the IBK or the image-based keyer. That's a very powerful one. I don't cover all these. I'm trying to cover the ones that you're going to potentially find in, say, like After Effects or Fusion, at least if they're not included in the program themselves, you'll find some variation, or they can be a paid plugin, whereas the IBK is specific only to Nuke. So let's go ahead and just do the very basics with these, and let's run through and see what we have. So for the Keylight node, I'm going to go ahead and plug the source into my source green screen clip. I'm going to go move the background off to the side here for now. And let's go ahead and just select this Keylight node, press 1, double click if I don't already see the controls here. And by default with the Keylight node, you do not have the color picker selected. So I need to select this little black box right here so I see the little color picker on there. Once I do that, if I hold down Control and Alt or Control and Option on a Mac, I'm going to go ahead and Control Alt left click somewhere on the green screen where I want to start keying out. Now, you can see that everything goes to black right away. That's because the view is on final result right now. If I go and select my viewer or hover over my viewer and press A for alpha, I can go in and see that it started to try and key out the green screen in that particular area. And this is a good thing to kind of point out, is that you might think you have a very well evenly lit green screen, and by all accounts this was a pretty decently lit green screen, but since the software is so mathematically precise, where I'm clicking and sampling the green screen, I'm going to get different results. So typically what you're going to do, and we're not going to do this in this video, is you would split up and do basically a number of different keys for different sections that have different lighting for the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe just do this for the head region this time around. I'm just going to try and find a good starting point for each of these keys, and that's basically as far as I'm going to go with all these. So that looks like a pretty decent starting key for the head key with Keylight. Now if I pump up the luminance here for the viewer, you can see I still have plenty of the background left. And if I knock it down, I do have some transparency in her matte as well, which we'll want to take care of. But let's go ahead and just jump on to the next one here. We have our Primatte node. I'm going to go ahead and plug this guy into the foreground input, the FG input. I'll double click on that to make sure I have my controls here. And in the viewer, I'll press A to go back to my color view from the alpha. If I wanted to do that in the view as well, I could always just press A for alpha. You can see this is toggling back and forth, or I could choose it from this drop-down menu here. So when you use the Primatte node, the color picker already is selected, so you don't have to do that manually, and the operation is already on Smart Select Background Color. So I'm going to go in and zoom in using plus and minus, and I'm just going to Control left click near her hair and her head again, and go ahead and see where this starts off. Now, right away, you can see she goes kind of nuclear sunburned. We're going to fix that in a second. I'm going to go and press A for alpha and see how we started. So the math for all of these is different, and already you can see the Keylight node is giving us a much different result than the Primatte node. So with the Primatte node, I might go ahead and Control left click and just try and find the best, or at least a decent starting point. And that might be fine somewhere around there. And the reason we're getting this odd color here on her skin is because there's some funk going on with the transparency in her matte on her skin. So basically the easiest way to fix that is I'm going to go in and do clean foreground noise and just Control left click, and you can see that fixes that. So if there's any transparency to her pixels or any type of object's pixels, that oftentimes will discolor the result that you're getting. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I'm going to go ahead and press A for alpha. And so just a one-click solution, this is kind of where I'm at right now. Now, next one over, I'm going to go ahead and view the keyer node. I'll plug this into my footage. I'll go out of my alpha channel. And what I want to do with this one is double click on it, and I want to change it from operation luminance key since I have a green screen, use green screen. Now, the easy thing to accidentally do is choose green here, because you see green and like, okay, I'll just choose this thing that says green. If you're using a green screen or a blue screen, make sure you actually choose green screen or blue screen. Or if you are using the seldomly used red screen, you can choose that as well. So I'm going to choose green screen. If I view my alpha channel, you start to get this black and white matte, but you need to push it quite a bit. So this is already kind of towards white. So I'm going to go and push this towards black. And you can see I'm starting to get a decent result. Now, if I push this too far, like any of the keys, you can see I start to lose the detail around the edges, the transparent edges or the hair detail, things like that. So I don't want to push it too far. That's why I'm doing just a little bit at a time. And again, if I go ahead and darken this, pump this up, I can see that I got this area black, which is transparent. And if I go ahead and drop this down, there is some see-through sections on her hair and things like that. Probably don't need to worry about that, but if I did want to adjust that, I can go ahead and move my upper right slider towards white, and that will fix that after just the slightest of nudging with that. And of course, I kind of glossed over that, but this lower left-hand slider is for your background, where you're bringing in what you want to be considered background. All right, so the last one we're going to take a look at is Ultimatte. I'm going to go ahead and plug that into the foreground. I'll go ahead and press 1 to view it, double click on it, and I'll go ahead and go back to my color view. And I do need to select my screen color selection box here. I'm going to go ahead and control left click. And out the gate, this has done a pretty decent job. It's a little bit less detailed than on the other ones, but when you actually do your composite, it looks pretty nice. So if I go ahead and pump this up, it's actually done a really good job of getting rid of pretty much all the color on the background, or all the green screen. And if I go ahead and darken this down, you can see that there's not too much left on the interior of her unless I really, really turn this down. Now, this particular key that I'm doing right now on these different keys, I'm just focusing on the head. So I'm not really going to concern myself too much with everything down here, because you can see that I still do have a lot of the screen down here. I'm just going to try and refine it a little bit up here. So now that we have at least our one-click, or basically one-click starting points, let's go back and just start to refine these just very, very minorly without doing too much. And we're not going to do inner outer keys or anything like that. We're just going to get the beginnings of a key here. So with the Keylight, I'm going to double-click and press 1 on it so I can see it in the viewer here. I want to go ahead and try and get the screen to black, which you can see there's still plenty of parts of the screen that aren't to black around her head. And I can go ahead and do that with my screen matte. I'm going to go and do clip black, and I'm just going to do that in the most minor amount possible. So you can see if I just do this the slightest amount, that's pushing that towards black. And you could try and use your screen gain as well. It's a back and forth between the two to see what gives you the better results. The basic goal is you want to lose as little detail as possible. So it's going to be a lot of back and forth. So that's gotten rid of most of the green screen. I'll go and maybe do clip black just slightly. There we go. And did I even need to use the screen gain? Let's go and put this back to 1. Yeah, I'll just go and leave it. Since it's just for the head, I'll maybe go on and do that just a very, very minor amount. I'll move to the right of the 1 and press up just to do a decimal place. I'll go to the right again to do another decimal place. So now I'm in the hundredths column. And I'll just do that just a little bit to get it clean right around her head. So I'll go ahead and put my viewer back to the base of 1. So my gamma is not pumped up or down, my luminance. And I'll go ahead and jump to the next section, which is trying to get her interior to white. So again, I'm not going to worry down here on her shoulders, just worrying about the head. And I'll go ahead and use my clip white. And I'm just going to slightly as possible try and bump that towards being opaque. And I don't need to get every single little pixel perfect, because remember I have this down a whole lot. If I go back to normal, you can see that this is looking pretty clean. All right, so if I go ahead and want to test this out and see how it looks, I'm going to do this with all the different keys as I go through. A nice way to be able to do it is you have, and I've already set this up here, go ahead and create a constant that's either kind of a gray, or in this case, I made a constant and I made it the exact same color as the original green screen. So I just made a constant and it was viewing the green screen footage itself, clicked on the color picker for the constant, and just control left click to make that green. So if I go ahead and plug this into this little dot that I have here, and in this first merge I plug in my Keylight, I can go ahead and view what does this key look like after it's keyed on top of basically the same green color. And the goal is, if I zoom in here, I don't want to lose any details. So if I press 1 here and I press 2 here, Am I losing any detail as far as her hair detail or the soft edges? Not really. This is looking pretty clean. So this is telling me that out the gate, this might be a pretty good candidate for my keyer. So let's go ahead and go on to the Primatte node, and we need to clean this up just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pump this up, and I can see there's still a lot of black left in the background here. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I double click on my Primatte so I have controls there, and the next one down is clean background noise. So I'm going to go ahead and control left click just once or twice, a few times, or I can control left click and drag and just start to clean this background noise to try and get rid of it. I can also hold down control and shift and do the same thing as well, and anything inside that box is going to get excluded and turn transparent. Now, again, we're not using an inner outer key in this particular case, which would be very beneficial because we'll get rid of all this out here. But just from a get-go, we're just going to see what we have. So if I go ahead and go back to my regular view, I still do have some green screen left over, but not a whole lot. I might see how this looks on the actual background before I try and push this any further. Because remember, if you don't see it and you don't have to jeopardize or compromise your edges, that's probably better. I probably do want to get rid of a little bit more down here because I want to kind of go down to the neck and shoulders. So I'll do a little bit more of the clean background noise down to here. And we'll go ahead and just kind of start from there and see how that gets us. All right, so that's gotten a good chunk of the green screen away. Now let's go ahead and see if there's any left on our interior. I think I already took care of that. So I think we're okay with that. So let's go ahead and take a look at our Primatte. I'll press A for alpha, or I can go back to RGB here. And let's go ahead and put her on our test background as well. So let's go ahead and plug in our Primatte here and view this. And okay, so clearly we have some green screen left down here around the edges, but we're not worrying about that. If we just go ahead and zoom in here and look at her keyed footage versus her original footage, so I'll press 1 here, and I'll press 2 here, and I can just toggle back and forth. So you can see that we're losing a little bit. I'll press spacebar to go full screen. You can see we're losing a little bit of the nice transparency, like this is becoming a little bit more opaque along her hair, even though we might not want that, and we're losing some of the softness here. So the Primatte, at least out the gate, without messing with it too much, might not be as good of a candidate as, say, in this case, with the Keylight version, because the Keylight version is changing very, very little. All right, so let's go and work on down the road. We have our keyer node that we already basically set up, everything. Now, the one thing about the keyer node to note is it doesn't automatically cut it out from the background. If I choose Keylight, it's already cut it out from the green screen. If I choose Primatte, already cut it out from the green screen. That's because we have it already set to do that. We have it on final result for the Keylight, and similarly on Primatte. For keyer, we don't have that option. We just need to go ahead and add a node after this. I'll select this and press tab and just start to type the word Primatte, and that's going to cut it out. The other thing to note about the keyer node is it does not have any spill suppression built in. So basically, if you look at her footage around the edges of her hair and her neck, there's green spilling being reflected off the screen onto her skin, and the Keylight node automatically tries to get rid of that, as does the Primatte node, and there's controls to adjust these. But the point here is the keyer node does not have that, and so even once we cut it out, we don't have that green taken away. Now I'm going to go ahead and just, since we're not talking about spill suppression in this specific video, I'm going to just pop in an expression here that I've pre-set up that will get rid of the green spill. I'll go over that in another video. But now we can kind of see that she does have kind of a brown edge on her because it's kind of trying to take out the green spill, but at least she's not looking like this anymore. If I press D and disable this expression node, we can see there's still a lot of green that we're getting rid of. All right, so let's go ahead and plug this in and see how we're looking against the green background. So go and view this. 1 is our result with our keyer node, and then 2 is our original green screen. So I would say, at least with the expression node added on here, this is actually looking pretty good. I'll press spacebar to go full screen. So 1, 2, 1, 2. So here's our merge. This is our result. This is what we started with. And of course, in any of these, we could do a wipe as well. So I could go and do W for wipe. And over here, I could just go back and forth between the result. And you can see a little bit easier. Okay, we're not really losing any detail here. So the keyer node seems like it might be a pretty good keyer to work with here. All right, so I'm press W to turn off my wipe, press spacebar to go out of full screen. And last but not least, let's go ahead and take a look at our Ultimatte. So if I go and view my Ultimatte, I don't think there was anything I needed to worry about as far as the internal of the key. I think the hair right there is supposed to be transparent. And then as far as the green screen, it's pretty much gotten rid of all of it. So let's go ahead and just use this as is and see how this does. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll make a dot. So I'm going to just press period on the keyboard with nothing selected. So I'm not crossing in front of here. I'm going to go ahead and plug this guy into this merge right here. And I'll press A to go out back to my color view. I'll press 1 to view this. And then I'll go and press 2 to view the original. If I zoom in, I'll go a whole pixel amount using plus and minus. If I go ahead and press spacebar full screen, I'll do a wipe again. How is this looking for us? So the Ultimatte looks like it's doing a pretty decent job, though you can see we are losing some of the softness along the edges right here. Now again, on any of these keyers, if you mess with the settings more, you could probably retain more, but this is just out the gate which one is going to work best for you. While this is a tutorial video, it's going a little bit longer. If you were to take your green screen footage, set these up, plug them in, do a click or two and slight adjustments, probably within 5 minutes you can tell which ones are going to give you the best out the gate results. And last but not least, I wanted to give a little quick look at is the difference keyer. And this one isn't usually going to be a solution in and of itself, but I wasn't here when they were shooting this footage, but this is a student wanting to do the Pulp Fiction scene here. And he wanted to be, of course, Samuel Jackson. And we have him right here, and you can see that this is not an ideal case for green screen. There's a lot of creases against the screen. It doesn't cover all the way up here, and you can see the shading on it. There's huge shadow being cast by him right here. So this, for a regular keyer, would be a very difficult task, not because the matte isn't good, but say if I wanted to do a Primatte here, and I just went ahead and did a control left click on the background, and press A for alpha, well, you can see I'm not getting very much of the background, and that is because, well, it's saying there's only the software is thinking I only want to get rid of a very particular shade of green, which is where I happen to be clicking. And everything else looks far different to it, meaning these areas down here and things like that. So that's not getting taken out as easy. Now, the nice thing about difference key is basically you have two different elements. You have your footage with the person against the screen, and you have just the background by itself. And so 1, 2, if I toggle back and forth, there is some slight movement of the kind of curtain here, or the green screen that they set up here as the shot goes on. But you can see right now it's not really moving that much. So what the difference keyer is going to try and do is isolate, say, okay, is this pixel different between this image and this image? If it isn't, it's going to try and cancel it out. If it is, it's going to try and keep that pixel. So let's go ahead and make a difference keyer. I'm going to plug in my A and my B. It doesn't really matter which one is which. And I'll go and press 1 and then press A for alpha. And you can kind of see it's starting to do a little bit of a cutout for us. Now, you need to up the gain quite a bit to make this work, and it only goes up to 1. So you can type in a value of something super high, but probably what's going to be easier is just hover in front of the number 1 to the left of it and press the up arrow key on your keyboard. And you can see as I up that, even though the slider only goes to here, it's basically going outside the area of what the slider goes. And this is not going to be perfect, but I can get rid of most of the edges. So I'm just trying to look in here and see how much am I getting of this clean. I'm not worried about the inside here because I'd use this with a different technique. But here I'm starting to get a pretty clean edge here. And if I need to adjust the black background, I can use this offset just slightly. I'm going to probably want to do this a very small amount. So I'm going to use the hundredths column here and just use up and down. And now I'm starting to get a not great result, but a pretty decent result with minimal effort. So if I go ahead and go out of the alpha channel, and I do a pre-mult after this difference key, I can see that I actually have a cutout created here. Let's go ahead and do a Shift X to swap these around, because as far as setting up the difference key, it doesn't matter the order, but as far as actually cutting it out, it does matter. So you can see I kind of have the startings of a cutout here. And let me go ahead and borrow this expression I did over here. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in before I do the pre-mult, and this is going to try and cancel out the green. So you can see that with minimal effort, this is not a great key. I would need to do quite a bit more work to get it looking really good, but out the gate, this is not too shabby. So the last really test on these is we can test it against a green screen or a blue screen or whatever you think, or we can do like a gray and see how much noise we're being left over with and things like that. Now it's all well and good to look at the footage against a green background like I do here, or maybe a gray background, and see how the edges are looking compared to the original footage. But really, if you have the luxury of having the final background, that's really the ultimate test. If it looks great against a fake green screen or a gray or whatever like that, but it doesn't look good against the final background, then, well, that's not doing you too much good. So in this case, here's the background we wanted to put her against. And since we have so much of the background still left over of the set that the green screen was shot against, I'm going to go ahead and just bring up this roto that I have set up just to cut out the area that I want. And again, this is just about the keyers, so I'm not going to go into depth on this. But let's say I want to use a Keylight. I'm going to do an in node and drag this down just a bit and just connect it here. I'm going to say I want the A, which is my Keylight, kept inside of the B, which is this roto. And if I plug this in here and go ahead and view the result, I can see that now we've gotten rid of all the junk outside of there. So we have just what we want. And let's go ahead and now merge her, M for merge, with that end node selected, A over B. And we'll put her on the background. So she's Godzilla Kimber right now. So we need to shrink her down. So I'll select her footage and press T for transform. Or I could, of course, press Tab and start at type transform. But I'll go ahead and shrink her down, and I'm not going to try and replace her with the other girl right now, but I'm going to go ahead and just put her next to her so we can kind of get a look. And I'm not going to bother with color correction, just kind of looking at edges and seeing how she's feeding in there. And it looks like we're retaining most of the detail on her edges, especially when we consider the edges on the other characters. And that's one thing that I should mention, is that any of these keyers, since we're shrinking down her footage and placing her small in the frame, might work fine. When I'm looking at this Ultimatte really close up, and I see that, oh, we're losing a little bit of detail here, and we go between here and here, we're losing a little bit. Well, when we shrink her down and we have her against the background and we have her color corrected, that might not show up. And so the one thing you kind of need to always keep in mind is like, okay, what battles are worth it? When you're needing to get something out the door, it needs to look good, it needs to look convincing, it needs to look seamless. But if you're not ever going to notice it, then you don't want to spend time on it. So the goal of this hopefully has come through well, in that we have the different keyers. We have Keylight, we have Primatte, we have the keyer node, we have the Ultimatte node, and then we also took a look at the difference keyer. And all of these have different uses and different math behind them. And I guess at the end of the day, whenever you have a shot, whenever you have green screen, bring in your footage, try each of these, give them about 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever it is to see how it is, see which one's going to give you the best results out the gate and is the most promising. And that's how you can save time in the long run. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next Johnny How To.